Frozen 2 is going to be big. Seriously, it's gonna be huge, epic even. And we know that because that's what we've been told by the film's writers and directors. Basically, everybody who's involved with it in some way has said at some point that this film is on a much larger scale than the first one. Now, how exactly is this film going to be so big? Well, it's looking like it's gonna take our heroes away from Arendelle on a quest to accomplish something. That something, we believe at least, is the search for Anna and Elsa's parents, and the idea that they are in fact still alive. And it all comes down to an offhanded comment made by one of the directors, an old book, and some pretty in-your-face symbolism contained in both of the trailers. Disney has a long history of treating the parents of their main characters rather horribly. If they aren't mysteriously missing or something, one or both of them is probably dead. It's such a common trope in this film that it's actually a bit of a joke at this point, with memes devoted to it and everything. It's sort of up there with the Disney princesses jokes that even Disney made in Wreck-It Ralph 2.
Do you have daddy issues?
I don't even have a mom.
Neither do we!
So of course, when Anna and Elsa's parents seemingly bit the big one early on in the original Frozen, it seemed to be pretty par for the course. Not any less of a bummer, admittedly, but still kind of to be expected. However, since that film came out, a lot of people on the internet have speculated that the former king and queen of Arendelle are actually not dead, just stranded out somewhere with no way to get home. Probably due to the fact that we don't see any bodies, which is normally logic applied to horror films more often than not, but I guess it still kinda works here. And some of the theories regarding the parents are pretty out there, all things considered. And the one that you've no doubt heard the most, if you've been on the internet at all over the last few years, is the idea that Anna and Elsa's parents found themselves stranded on a tropical island somewhere, where the former queen gave birth to a bouncing baby boy who went on to become none other than Disney's Tarzan. It's a fun theory to be sure, but for my money, the upcoming Frozen 2 is probably going to debunk it pretty handily by revealing that Anna and Elsa's parents are in fact alive and didn't spawn a vine-swinging, gorilla-befriending, bad guy-hanging beefcake like Tarzan. Now, how do I figure that Frozen 2 is going to feature the former king and queen? Well, the second trailer may have given that away. It seems as if the parents will appear, at the very least in some sort of flashback form. Around 1 minute into the second trailer release, just after we see the young Elsa looking all angsty, there's a shot of a woman looking out at the northern lights. Now, we could just brush that off as an older Anna glancing out the palace windows, but look closer. I said closer. Okay, maybe not that close. Yeah, that definitely looks more like the former queen herself. Just check out the hairstyle and outfit. It matches the exact details of the queen from the original film. And unless Anna is channeling Norman Bates from Psycho, it's definitely the queen in some sort of flashback before that fateful trip on the ship of doom. Or she's just straight up back in the castle, in which case it seems a little weird for her to have not aged. So besides the blink and you miss it moment with the back of the queen's skull, what else indicates a journey to find Elsa and Anna's parents? Well, there've been a lot of little things here and there that point in that direction. Looking at the trailers that have been released, with both of them, we immediately get some rather striking imagery that leads us to think that the film will involve the parents. Mainly, the waves that Elsa faces down. Looking at the shots of the stormy ocean, if you think about it, these shots actually bear a striking resemblance to the shot we got in the first film of Anna and Elsa's parents' ship getting thrown about, which inferred their passing. Now, you might be thinking, wait a second here, it's just another stormy sea. That doesn't necessarily mean that the parents are alive or that the film is going to have anything to do with them in general. True, this could just be a completely unrelated storm that just happens to be in the sequel, but from a storytelling perspective, that would be a bit odd and honestly, just a little bit disappointing. There is almost certainly a reason why both films have made a point of including a raging storm, and logically, it would make sense for the connection to be there. But if that symbolism isn't enough for you, we've got a few other little details that point in the paternal direction. For example, the most recent trailer had an emphasis on Elsa's past and the extent of her powers. The trailer begins just as the first one did, with Elsa staring down the waves sternly as if she was saying to them, "Hey, screw you, waves. You took my parents away from me as a kid, and now I'm gonna assert my dominance over you by running all over your face." And she certainly tries to do that. Tries being the operative word there, as she falls beneath them, meeting a water horse in the process. That, by the way, is Nock, a magical spirit guide of sorts, which is an interesting inclusion in the film, especially considering its connection to the stormy sea that we see here. Think about this for a second. What if, when their ship got taken out in the ocean storm, Anna and Elsa's parents saw Nock just as Elsa is seeing it here? Could it have helped them make their way to shore, to this enchanted land that we see throughout the rest of the trailers for the second film? It is an interesting thought indeed, and while there isn't anything concrete telling us that this is indeed what happened, it is a distinct possibility at this point, so it warrants mentioning for sure. After all of that water stuff, we get to hear from the king of the trolls, speaking with Elsa, straight up telling her that the past is not what it seems, and that she must find the truth, venturing north to far-off lands to discover it. Now, odds are this has to do with Elsa's powers, which once again seem to be playing a major role in the film overall. Heck, the official synopsis for the film included the line, "Why was Elsa born with magical powers?" Confirming the idea, by the way, that Elsa was born as a frost-flinging super being, as opposed to somehow gaining these powers via some outside force. Now, think about this one for a second. Do you know who would probably know a bit more about the circumstances of Elsa's birth, who may have some information about how she came to be this way? How about the freaking people who gave birth to her in the first place? You know, her parents. Now, you might assume that they may not know much about the origins of Elsa's powers. However, there was a single, rather quick moment in the first Frozen film that sort of points to the idea that her powers are nothing new to the royal family. And yes, I know about the Once Upon a Time character that was introduced that turned out to be her aunt, but we don't necessarily consider that canon here, so we're kind of just going to ignore that. The shot in question occurs pretty early on in the film, after Elsa takes out Anna with an accidentally thrown, yet nonetheless impressive, headshot, where the king goes to a library and fetches down an old, worn book. He frantically flips through it, coming upon a page that seems to point to the trolls being able to handle this kind of thing. So that tells us that the trolls have dealt with magical afflictions before, but not necessarily ice power wielding children. So what? Well, there had to be some reason why the king and queen seemed like they had seen this kind of thing before, and why a book such as that existed at all in the first place. It seems like this is the sort of situation that the larger royal family, meaning not just the current ones but also their ancestors, had dealt with at some point, to the degree that they seem to have set protocol if this very situation were to ever arise. So for Elsa to truly understand her origins, she may have to locate her parents, either one or both I suppose, and ask them herself. But wait, why couldn't she just go and find the old book that her dad was looking at? Wouldn't that have the answers as well? Well, there could be a couple different issues stopping her from doing so. First up is the fact that the book seems to be written in a sort of runic script. So in theory, she may not be able to actually read what it says. Also, there is the idea that the book itself may not have the answers that she seeks. It is very likely that, in addition to the information in the book, knowledge of these powers could have been passed down orally, meaning that she would need to hear from someone who had been previously told stuff by her ancestors, like her parents. Or there's also the idea that Elsa may be completely unaware that the book exists at all. I mean, it does appear to be located in a rather rundown and seldom visited part of the castle, as illustrated by the spiderweb in the corner of the frame. So even if the book does contain all the answers she requires, she may not know that it's there, which would make for a rather funny moment if she goes on this epic journey only to find out that she could have figured this all out at home, potentially without even changing out of her pajamas. So the possibility of Anna and Elsa needing to seek out their still living parents for information is definitely high. I mean, the Troll King telling Elsa that the past is not what she thinks could itself be pointing to the idea that her parents are alive. She thinks that her parents died all those years ago. And if this theory does indeed turn out to be true, that could be the truth that the Troll King is talking about. Finally, the last piece of evidence that might suggest that Anna and Elsa's parents will play a role in Frozen 2 comes from a comment made by one of the film's directors. Jennifer Lee, co-director of the film alongside Chris Buck, was speaking with Slash Film about returning to the world of Frozen, and said, quote, "We weren't gonna do a sequel. Chris and I were like, that story's done. But then one day we just made the mistake of talking about something and going, oh my gosh, that's the thing we still haven't explored, and it's important. So obviously Lee there was talking about something that was brought up in the first film, but wasn't fully explored. Looking back at that first film, there were really only two things that went completely unexplored: the fate of the parents, and the origin of Elsa's powers. As we already talked about a little bit earlier on in this video, the two ideas are potentially linked. So there is a pretty strong chance that either outcome could be viable. So we will just have to have a little patience and wait until November for our final answer. As for whether or not Tarzan is going to make an appearance, I wouldn't hold your breath for that one. Or, this theory could be completely off base and not in any way correct. What do you think? Do you think this theory holds water? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below, and while you're down there, why not like this video and subscribe to Screen Rant for more great content just like this. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you at the movies.